Have you ever wondered why some people seem to carry a different kind of weight in life? Like even when you do everything right, the path still feels heavier for you. Not harder because you're failing, harder because you're being shaped. And if you're someone who genuinely wants to walk with God, who tries to live with integrity, prayer, and purpose, you may have noticed something that doesn't get talked about enough. Sometimes the closer you get to the divine, the more intense the storms feel, not because God is against you, not because you're cursed, but because calling has friction. If you've ever felt set apart, like your life is being refined in ways other people don't understand, this message is for you. And I want to say this carefully. This isn't about glorifying pain or pretending suffering is good. It's about recognizing a pattern that shows up in the lives of spiritually serious people across history. There are pains that don't feel random, pains that confuse you, but also transform you, pains that look like punishment, but may actually be preparation. If you've cried alone wondering why God allows so much pressure, if friends have distanced themselves with no clear explanation, if you feel like you're carrying a weight nobody else can see, then stay with me. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 pains that often show up when a person is being formed for a deeper purpose. And by naming them, you'll understand something powerful. You're not crazy, you're not abandoned, and you are not alone. And watch until the end, because we won't just identify these pains. We'll talk about what they produce and how to move through them without losing yourself. This channel is built for seekers, people learning to live with spiritual clarity in a noisy world. Let's begin. 1. The pain of rejection. Do you remember that friend who stopped calling? The family member who started looking at you differently? The co-workers who quietly stopped inviting you? Rejection hits differently when you're walking seriously with God, because it often arrives without a clear explanation. One day people are present, the next day they're gone. You replay your words, you review your actions, you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? And sometimes the truth is simple and painful. You didn't get worse, you got clearer. Your light increased, and that light confronts people. Not through your words, but through your presence. Your very existence starts asking questions people don't want to answer. Not everyone rejects you because they hate you. Some reject you because being near you activates something they've been avoiding. When Jesus began his ministry, even people close to him struggled to recognize what was happening. He was questioned, doubted, misunderstood. And that's a sobering reminder. Being aligned doesn't guarantee being applauded, but rejection has a purpose. It teaches you to rely less on human approval and more on divine guidance. Because when everyone claps, it becomes easy to confuse pleasing people with pleasing God. And here's something you may have noticed. Rejection often intensifies right when you get more serious spiritually. When you start praying more, when you begin fasting, when you stop feeding old habits, when you choose discipline. That timing is not always random. Sometimes what feels like abandonment is actually filtering. Sometimes God is cleansing your circle, removing what can't walk in the rhythm of where you're going. Today's pain becomes tomorrow's protection. And yes, this hurts. But it also frees you, because it teaches you to bless people from a distance, without chasing them. Stop trying to reopen doors God has allowed to close. If someone can't honor your growth, they don't get access to your future. And don't worry, new relationships will come. People who respect your values, strengthen your walk, and recognize the version of you that's emerging. 2. The pain of purposeful loneliness. There's a kind of loneliness that can't be fixed by being around people. A room full of voices can still feel like isolation when your spirit is carrying something nobody else can hold. You smile, you participate, you stay present, but inside, there's a silence because you're carrying thoughts you can't share, dreams that would sound too much, a sense of spiritual reality that doesn't fit normal conversation. Others talk about small plans. You feel a larger calling. They worry about the next week. You sense something eternal pressing on your decisions. And that gap between your inner world and the world around you creates loneliness. Not because you're superior, but because you're tuned differently. And this loneliness has a name. Purposeful loneliness. It's the solitude that forms you when you're walking toward a destiny only you can see. Some of your hardest moments won't be loud. They'll be quiet. The silence after prayer. The nights you can't sleep. The doubts you don't tell anyone about. The battles too personal to explain. Even Jesus experienced a version of this in Gethsemane, asking for support, yet feeling alone in the weight of what he carried. That's not weakness. That's what it looks like to carry something real. And here's the hidden gift. When human misunderstanding increases, divine understanding deepens. When horizontal comfort decreases, vertical intimacy grows. It was in the wilderness that John the Baptist became clear. It was in isolation that Paul wrote letters that changed lives. It was in solitude that revelation sharpened. Loneliness isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's an incubator, a forge, a training ground. And one day the reason becomes clear, because you'll meet someone who feels what you felt, and you'll be able to say, I understand. Not from theory, from experience. Also hear this. This phase doesn't last forever. God connects aligned people at the right time. People who speak your spiritual language without long explanations. 3. The pain of the inner war. Inside every spiritually serious person, there's a silent battlefield. On one side, a spirit that wants God. On the other, the part of you that resists surrender, and the conflict is exhausting. You love God and still struggle. You want to pray and feel distracted. You want discipline and feel cravings intensify. You want purity and notice thoughts that shock you. Then the guilt hits, and the deeper your awareness is, the heavier the guilt can feel, because you know what alignment feels like, and you feel the contrast when you fall short. The Apostle Paul described this conflict plainly, how the desire to do what's right can clash with the pull of the flesh. That doesn't mean you're fake, it means you're awake. Here's what many don't understand. The absence of inner conflict is not always victory. Sometimes it's surrender. A person who feels no tension may have simply stopped fighting, but a spiritually sensitive person feels it sharply, not because they're weak, because their conscience is alive. And yes, temptation can become more intense when you're nearing breakthrough. If you've noticed stronger attacks before a big step, before a new season, a commitment, a spiritual assignment, you're not imagining it. Pressure often increases before expansion. What matters is what you do next. This life doesn't offer a stage where the flesh becomes silent forever, but it can offer something else: faster recovery, deeper honesty, more humility, more dependence on grace. You're not called to perform perfection. You're called to practice alignment, not never fall, but always return. And when you return again and again, you develop something powerful, spiritual resilience, the kind that produces quiet authority. 4. The pain of renunciation. If you're being shaped for deeper purpose, you'll eventually hear a whisper in your spirit. Let it go, and it will tighten your chest. Because often, God doesn't only ask you to release obvious wrong things. Sometimes He asks you to release good things. Things that would be fine for someone else, but would derail you. It can start small. A show you used to love now feels heavy. A song that used to excite you now disturbs your spirit. A habit that seemed harmless now feels like static. And then it gets bigger. Friendships that begin to pull you backward. A relationship that doesn't share your spiritual direction. A job that looks stable, but conflicts with your calling. A city you love, but something in you knows you can't stay. Abraham heard, "Leave." Moses walked away from the palace. Paul released his old identity. Renunciation is part of formation, and it can feel unfair. Why do I have to release this when others don't? But different callings require different preparation. Here's the strange math of God. Sometimes he removes the good to make room for the best. Sometimes he prunes to multiply. In the moment, you only see loss, but later you understand it was alignment. Every no out of obedience becomes a yes to purpose. Every door closed creates space for what wouldn't fit in your old life. 5. The pain of delay and silence. Time moves differently when you're in a refining season. You're carrying a promise, but you don't see proof. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass, and the silence starts to feel personal. You pray and feel nothing. You seek direction and find closed doors. You wonder if you misunderstood God or if you made it all up. Joseph had dreams, then prison. David was anointed, then caves. They lived in the tension between called and fulfilled. And delay is where the mind starts bargaining. Maybe I should force it. Maybe I should manufacture results. Maybe I should settle. This is where comparison becomes dangerous. You watch others advance quickly, you hear testimonies of instant answers, and you question why your process is slow. But the delay isn't empty. It builds endurance, it purifies motives, it deepens trust, it breaks dependency on constant emotional confirmation. And it teaches you to follow God, even when you don't feel God. That is rare faith. That is mature faith. Not the kind built on goosebumps, the kind built on obedience. If you felt that knot in your throat while listening, that quiet recognition that this is me, then hear this clearly. Your pain is not pointless. Rejection teaches you to rely less on approval. Loneliness deepens your intimacy with God. Inner conflict strengthens humility and resilience. Renunciation creates space for your real assignment. Delay teaches trust that can't be bought. You're not being punished, you're being formed. And yes, the process can feel like fire and pressure, but pressure does something. It reveals what's real. Diamonds aren't made in comfort, and neither is spiritual authority. So don't give up. When the next season arrives, you'll look back and realize every tear, every sleepless night, every closed door was shaping you into someone who could carry what you asked for. If this message resonated, share it with someone who needs strength right now. And make sure you subscribe, because this channel exists for seekers who are learning to live with clarity, courage, and spiritual depth. Awaken, ascend, become.